Sorry, Helen's just stuck in the other session. She's just watching my colleague behind the director in. Yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna go and help her. Ah, okay, so we're just gonna give Robert another minute to get in. I'm gonna have to mute myself. I'm getting quite a lot of noise coming back. I'm not sure any of you can hear me.
Back. I hope you made good use of the break. We're heading straight into our next panel debate, and this one focuses on the skills we have in our organisations and the ones we need to develop, covering upskilling of your existing teams and how we best prepare the skills needed in our future workforce. We'll be asking what our current challenges are and how we make best use of the different options that are out there. Apprenticeships have become a real area of strength and diversity in the public sector, with interesting and creative routes into all kinds of public sector and local authority careers. And there are plenty of other options too, from internal upskilling schemes through to work experience, student and graduate placements, and the newly emerging T-levels. All of these have an important role to play. So to talk about how we train and upskill our public sector workforce, I'd like to introduce you to David Gallagher, Chief Executive of NCFE, Vickie Roberts, Civil Service Apprenticeship Strategy Reform, Government Skills and Curriculum Unit at the Cabinet Office, Debbie Crawford, Head of Learning Resources Directorate at Central Bedfordshire Council, Robert Nitsch, CBE, Delivery Director for the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education. And also we have with us Dr. Anthony Manning, the Dean from the University of Kent, responsible for apprenticeships and lifelong learning. So don't forget, if you do have some questions for our panelists, please take advantage of our live Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll try to pose as many of those questions as possible. So very big welcome to all of my panelists. It's lovely to have you with us today. And of course, apprenticeships are a great way to upskill in the public sector. So it seems appropriate to start there. And I'd like to start, if I may, with Anthony. And given the challenges, Anthony, that we've faced over the last couple of years, and the fact that employers need to be more focused than ever on an efficient mechanism for equipping the workforce with the right skills, tell us about your work at the University of Kent and what solutions you offer in that space.
Sure, thanks, Helen. So at the University of Kent, we currently offer a series of 9 higher end degree apprenticeships across a portfolio which is developed, thankfully, with new degree apprenticeships and higher degree apprenticeships being developed. And so we're really committed to working closely with local and national employers of varying sizes to ensure that apprentices are able to get the best of both worlds, really, through combining work and study in a manner which is rigorous, as you'd expect, through university study, but also flexible to take into account the fact that people are working alongside. So some of our apprentices come through tendering exercises with organisations, others more directly through smaller SMEs or micros, and we're really trying to support businesses with existing workforce apprentices and also recruiting future workforce apprentices. So it's really trying to, develop that portfolio needs of industry and business across all sorts of different sectors, and to try and address the needs, important new style learners who are working and studying at the same time.
Oh, I'm sure it's so important, isn't it, to try and marry what you're teaching to the skills that we need now, because, of course, as we'll be exploring in other panels, those skills are changing rapidly. I mean, I know, Anthony, a lot of us have an idea of how, traditional apprentices work and learn, and most of us are familiar, not me actually, but with university life, because I didn't go, but we understand what university living is like. Who aren't aware, how do degree apprenticeships work?
Sure. So in many ways, as you might expect, apprenticeships combine the key features of learning and working in a way which I think definitely presents an excellent solution for both employers and employees. So apprenticeships require apprentices to spend 20% of their time studying, which could be a day per working week or an equivalent amount of time spread across more days. And apprenticeships to follow an industry-led specification created by what's called a trailblazer group, which is really using an apprenticeship standard, and this ensures that the skills which apprentices are required to develop are in line with those key skills that are all important to employers, which is why that blend of higher education and the world of work is so exciting in that space, particularly at the moment. And this follows through to the endpoint assessment those higher end degree apprenticeships, which really tests the knowledge and skills and behaviours that an apprentice has to gain. And that's, again, unique to each standard and allows that control and influence on that assessment, again, by the employers. So bringing in the learning and the development in the workplace to the future skills required in that context. So it really is an excellent blend.
We can. Hello, Rob. What are the relative merits, I'll put my teeth back in, of an apprenticeship in the public sector?
Thanks, Helen. I think the important thing, or a really important thing to say up front, is first of all, an apprenticeship isn't necessarily the solution to every single training or skills problem. Also, there's a real danger in thinking about apprenticeships sort of, there's a public sector group and there's then a group that's perhaps suitable for small and medium-sized enterprises, and then there's a large group. It's really important that we think about them generically, and the key thing that they offer is a really good grounding from level 2, so GCSE, up to master's level in an occupation. So they provide a fantastic platform, and I think the evidence is saying that actually people that launch from that platform are able to continue developing and learning, but their earning potential and things are perhaps higher than that of normal graduates or straightforward traditional graduate route at the age of 30. What they offer to the civil service, and what's really, really important, is first of all, they provide a means of getting talent into the civil service, because they are a different way of coming into an occupation, so diverse entry points. They support many civil service initiatives. Digital apprenticeships will support the digital agenda, but more importantly, they're universal, so they're available across the nation. So as the civil service starts to look out of the central civil service starts to look out of London, and of course they're used extremely successfully in local government, for example. So they really offer a growth opportunity and a workforce development opportunity. The other thing that they do is that people who are apprentices become very committed to the business that they're in. They become extremely positive about what they do. And, the Institute, 3.6% of the Institute are apprenticeships. So this is not just what we do, we live it as well. And so it becomes part of the movement and the culture of the organisation. So not only is it a great skills platform, not only does it allow individual opportunity, but also it really helps the business culturally develop. And what's been really interesting in COVID is that those organisations that have had an apprenticeship habit have generally kept it. And I think that shows a fantastic commitment. So there has been a drop-off, but a really encouraging recovery as we've come out of it. But actually, we've seen many more businesses than perhaps we might have first anticipated really sticking with their apprentices and apprenticeships. And I think, if anything's an endorsement for how successful the programme can be, it's that.
Bedfordshire Council, and I noticed you were nodding at the beginning where Rob was saying it's not the only option, obviously. So just wanted to explore what happens at Bedfordshire Council and the value of apprenticeships to you and other areas that you use at the council. Oh. Microphone sound on Debbie. I think we just need your sound, Debbie.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Will you start again for us? Because I don't think we had you there right at the beginning.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We can hear you now.
Brilliant. Okay. So we do have a number of pathways into working in the council. We use apprenticeships. We use apprenticeships for existing staff. We use apprenticeships for new staff. But we also look at the routes that feed into creating opportunities for apprenticeships. So we work with our local colleges, our local schools to provide opportunities really to get an experience of what working in a council is all about. So we sort of warm people up to the idea of a career in the council, because actually I think there is a misconception that working in a council is about emptying bins or collecting council tax, And the reality for us is that, you know, a council workforce is very diverse now. So we start at the point really of trying to give people that level of experience and understanding, so that we get to actually think, well, is this for me? You know, am I suitable for this kind of career? And so we bring them in other ways. Alongside, we do still recruit apprentices, but we also think there's great opportunities through our work with schools, colleges, universities to allow people to have placement experience, work experience, to get them understanding more about what councils are all about, really.
Vickie, how does the civil service apprenticeships still exist, please?
Apprenticeships through recruitment, and we also use them to upskill existing employees. The way in which capability is separated out in the civil service is it's by profession, and it's very much a profession-led agenda in terms of apprenticeships, so that we've got our subject matter experts leading those consultations with the providers, and that we've got that sort of consistent learning across all of the civil service, because, you know, there's so many different departments to work with. But part of that is embedding the apprenticeship as part of a career path, so people understand that there may be an entry level point. It doesn't always need to be recruitment. It can be a career change for an existing member of staff, or someone who's come in and is in a new role, you know, because they've been recruited from elsewhere within government. And then there's certain points at different stages in their career where there's an expectation that you will, you know, perhaps do another element of learning or an apprenticeship that'll take you further and further through that career path. And, you know, we're working hard to develop that and make that really visible for people, and also make sure that it's really clear that apprenticeships are valued as part of that, because they are still new in sense of the office environment, you know, compared to other learning packages. So it's demonstrating that value that apprenticeships can bring, and the return on investment for people and for the business in doing apprenticeships. That's really key to that.
And there's 5 voices on a panel, David. Somebody has to be last. You there. Welcome to our panel. I'm reading your background notes. As a child, you were bored with education, and it's somewhat ironic today that you sit here at the biggest boards. Do you think maybe apprenticeship programs would have motivated you in those older days? And indeed, what did motivate you and get you into your current career path and role?
Yeah, it's a great question, Helen, and I often reflect on the fact that if I'd have known more about apprenticeships, I think that's most likely the route that I would have gone down. I really like to experience experiential learning. You know, I like to get hands-on. I like to get practical. I tend to walk around with flip chart markers in my pocket, you know, when we were physically together, because that's how I learn. So unfortunately, when I was at school, which is a long time ago now, and it's still true for some people, they just don't get to hear enough about vocational and technical routes. Now, fortunately for me, once I was in the workforce, you know, after college, I had lots of line managers that really believed in learning and development, and how that would help me and help the organisation. And so whilst I didn't go through a formal apprenticeship programme, I think my grounding, and ironically in the public sector, I work for the organisation which is now the Education and Skills Funding Agency, that felt like an apprenticeship. Because the organisation invested really heavily in our development. We got off-the-job training, which I know sometimes is a challenge. So I definitely think that for young people coming into the workforce, it's a fantastic route, particularly for those who are more practically minded, particularly for those who want to earn whilst they learn and gain experience. But at any point in your career, you know, as I left that public sector organisation, they actually invested in a project management programme for me to help me to find, you know, my next opportunity as that organisation was going through a restructure. So I think apprenticeships now being available to everyone at all ages, from level 2 to level 7, is a great way of helping people to progress in their career, to transition from one job role to another. Hopefully, as they progress, create opportunities for new recruits coming through as well. And that for me is what sometimes signifies in organisations a really healthy and vibrant apprenticeship programme that actually is all about a cycle of moving people up and on in the organisation to create more opportunities for people coming through. And actually, whilst you know, formal education didn't work for me, that's why I'm in education, because I think there's lots of different ways in which we can support people to be the very best they can be, and apprenticeships is a great option.
Music to all of your ears that to know that we've got 3 brilliant young apprentices who are actually running this event today. It's fantastic for me as somebody of a certain age who's not as technically savvy as she should be, that I'm relying on the skills of 3 very young apprentices to help us live today. But that must be music to your ears, Anthony, is it, to hear that, you know, we're embracing it and just how impressive, you know, these young people are. I mean, they're so highly skilled, aren't they? And particularly in the digital world, which is so important to us all now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's really amazing. I mean, the majority of our degree apprenticeships are delivered digitally with that flexible learning in mind. And it's just astounding to see how apprenticeships and apprentices and unemployed effectively with us to navigate that really challenging space, I suppose, really, which we all recognise in terms of managing the challenges of work and learning at the same time. So for us, that's continually impressive. And yet, although it's a big challenge, I think, as other people have said today, the outcome of that is a learning opportunity and a skill set which is, you know, highly attuned to the needs of that organisation and breeds loyalty within the apprentice that follows that course, because they can really see how the learning can be applied and it can fit with the needs of their own development as well as that of their organisation. So interesting for me, some of the discussions having with employers seeking to join some of our apprenticeships, it's inspiring to see that some of them have been through apprenticeships themselves, and so they're now, you know, championing the route for other people within their organisations, and also being a kind of, you know, excellent role model for that lived experience of getting on in the organisation through that important route. So that's really exciting.
Many years ago, but I'm an apprentice actually. back in 1903, but you know, when university to be a journalist in my day only offered English literature, and having struggled through 12 books for A-levels, I decided to go and work at a newspaper when I was 17 instead. So I fly the flag for apprentices. Rob, I want to turn to you. You know, at a time when many investments have been put on hold and it's full steam ahead on the digital transformation, how has the pandemic, that $1 million question, increased the need for pretty urgent digital upskilling?
Well, thanks, Helen. Before I answer that, if you were doing your apprenticeship in 1903, I think David had finished school by 10 years by then. Just
you're very kind.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but returning to the really important question that you've raised, the profile that apprenticeships has followed in the pandemic has been sector specific, and people, you know, it won't escape people that different sectors have been affected to different levels. But the overall impact has been very significant, and I'm not understating here the impact on apprentices themselves, the impact on business, and the impact on the national economy. But the sort of thing that we've seen is that the first lockdown, that first sort of hit, we saw about a 50% drop-off in apprenticeship staff. We've seen that recover dramatically, and the drop-off in starts when we last sampled it, so before the sort of, you know, the latest uplift in the economy, it had recovered to only a 20% drop. So, you know, the pace of that recovery and how it's done, I think, is a testament to my claim earlier that people who've embraced apprenticeships have really stuck with it. We've also seen apprentices continue with their learning during the lockdown because it's a very flexible model, and I think that can be underestimated. Lots of people have just simply, you know, the education system has sort of it's striven really hard. I've got children who are being educated, and, you know, I know how difficult it's been, but, you know, penetrating and keeping some of the education going has been massively difficult. Actually, we've seen 60–70% of apprentices keeping going with their learning, their job learning, which is a tribute to them and a tribute to the learning providers and their employers. So, you know, it's a really flexible model that's managed to keep churning and going. So, yes, we've seen impact, but we've also seen really encouraging recovery. But I would underline that it is sector specific, and I think it'll take a little bit of time for the perturbations of that to settle down. But we have seen nothing that indicates in the medium to longer term that the apprenticeship offer will not continue to be exploited and taken forwards. And what we have seen in the public sector is actually the public sector has sort of held up well against the private sector generally. This is beyond the pandemic. So I think that the opportunities are there, and I'd really underline what other speakers have said in that context. And my experience speaking to apprentices is it does release young people's imagination and potential. It also can release that potential for people in work. It's a really generative vehicle that just somehow seems to light a spark in people, and they're just energized, and it's great to be part of that movement.
With the clock working against me, I'm going to slightly wind you up there, Rob, only because I want to flip across all our other panelists and Vickie, and also take some questions. Vickie, is the government doing enough, do you think, to prioritise funding for perhaps the lower skilled workers or unemployed to take the formal, I'm thinking of digital training here, that meets the requirements of employers in the growth sectors on that front?
I think that, you know, obviously the Chancellor's incentive payments for apprenticeships is really inspiring people to think about how they can bring, you know, young people or people who've been out of work back into the workplace. And, you know, the future is absolutely digital, whether that's just in terms of, you know, being able to do another job day to day or doing a digital specific job. So it's really important that we have that foundation, not just only in the digital specific apprenticeships and learning, but also in all learning, because we all need to be thinking in that sort of mindset, don't we? You know, so, I mean, in the civil service, we've got a digital profession, which are really leading the front of our professions in terms of apprenticeships. And you know, they're really great at bringing people in for external experience, older apprentices or young people straight from other elements of education, and taking them through that journey of building those skills, but at the same time doing it in a way which allows them to understand the organisation that they're working for, or the civil service if it's a wider role, and it's that contextual bit that apprenticeships give people that perhaps other learning doesn't. You know, it gives you an opportunity as an employer to sort of, I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but, you know, get people to buy into working for your organisation and give that time back once they've achieved that level of learning. In terms of the return on investment, it's really important. And in the digital space, it's absolutely a buzzing market.
A couple of 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's see if we can whiz through. I think there's a couple of questions here that might be suitable for Debbie and potentially David. Debbie, I think this one might work for you. Chris Cromer says, I think it's excellent that apprenticeships. Oh, Chris Cromer, that question's disappeared. Let's try a different one. Andrew Abrahams. I think it's oh no, Chris Cromer's is back. Oh God, there's a world here. Need an apprentice here to help. Chris Cromer says, I think it's excellent that apprenticeships are available for differing levels within an organisation, as they're mostly considered for entry level or similar. Have the panel seen successful experiences with mid to senior level apprenticeships? And I wondered whether that was perhaps a good one for you, Debbie.
Yes, that is a good question. And we have actually, what we did recently was we mapped apprenticeship standards to some of our hard to fill roles. So things like town planner, social work, you know, occupational therapists, they're roles that we find incredibly difficult to recruit staff to. So our succession plan was to bring people in or to develop existing staff into those roles through apprenticeships, and that's worked incredibly well. And we've also had people doing sort of level 7, so, you know, senior roles that they felt needed a bit more development, and there were apprenticeships that were able to deliver on that, and they've done incredibly well through that route as well. So whilst we talk about apprenticeships as entry level, we also talk about apprenticeships for existing staff, and You know, they do work for everybody, actually. If you map the apprenticeship well, then the outcome is generally very good.
David, I think this question from Andrew Abrahams might be one for you. The route to apprenticeships needs to start earlier. Andy, year 9s choose their options. Vocational education with links to business/trades need to become more part of the general get my teeth in again, curriculum even, and valued in the points system. And that's Mayor Andy from Mansfield District Council. Is that a good one for you, David?
Yeah, very happy to take that, Helen. There was a very inspirational college leader that I met a number of years ago that said, David, that the key to our success in this area is getting in at year 7, year 8, sometimes year 9, and opening people's eyes in terms of this world of possibility as to all the different occupations that are out there. Then year 9, 10, 11, we tend to leave them alone for 2 reasons. 1, exams get in the way, and 2, people start getting interested in boys and girls and other things. Distractions, and therefore it just doesn't work. It's not the right time. But if you get in there and plant the seed early and inspire and motivate and engage and use real world examples, that's the time to sort of plant the seeds that then sort of take root and hopefully flourish. And then when people get to school leaving age, they understand their options better. They may want to go to full-time college and then on into the world of work or straight into an apprenticeship. So I definitely agree. And look, I'm a little bit biased. We predominantly work in vocational and technical, and I'm I suppose an example of, if I'd have known a little bit earlier, and I'm certainly not complaining about where I've gotten to, but I definitely would have explored different things that I just didn't know were available to me. So getting in earlier, careers advice, employers taking an active role. And in the public sector, I mean, the public sector is hidden to lots of people, as we mentioned. I think it was Debbie mentioned it. There is such a rich variety of different job roles and lots of exciting careers, and now progression routes all the way through with the support of apprenticeships. What a fantastic opportunity to open people's eyes to these really important job roles in really important organisations that make a massive difference to society.
About a minute left. We've got one more question from Paul Clark. Paul says, we're a commercial organisation that builds data skills in teams in the workplace. We want to offer a service to the public sector against the backdrop of budget and time pressures. What advice can the panel offer? If I can take an answer from you and just a final thought from you, Rob, on that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Helen. I'll just reach out to me privately and I'll probably help with that. I think there are lots of opportunities in the public sector that's trying to digitise. I think the final message I'd have is apprenticeships do offer a wonderful opportunity for people. They also offer a wonderful opportunity for businesses and for the public sector. And I would really encourage anybody who's listening to have a look to see what the opportunities are. Multiple levels across the whole area of activity, and if there's not an apprenticeship there for you, get in touch because we can make one.
Which has been fantastic, and the clock's raced against me because there's so much to talk about, but the final word is yours, Anthony.
Yeah, I just encourage employers, future apprentices, to reach out and find out more information, as colleagues have been saying. So if you're employee, then you can reach out to your line manager or find out more about what's available. And if you're an employer, you can go to the Find an Apprenticeship service to find out an apprenticeship that fits your organisation's needs. And we encourage you to get in touch with delivery partners like the University of Kent and other providers that you're interested in to learn more from that side of things. We're always willing and helpful to give you more information about an employer or an apprentice.
About today's event, you know, in the introduction we said this is a community we're building. It's just not an event, and I think people in our audience hopefully will really appreciate, you know, the invite from Rob there to our person who posed the question to get in touch, and yours, Anthony. And there was so much more to talk about. There was a nice story I wanted to get from David before we ended, but I don't think we've got time. It was your kind gesture too, and I haven't got the name in front of me now. Was it a footballer, David, the Francis Adu story? Can you tell that in 30 seconds?
Well, probably not actually, Helen. I'll struggle, but I think working in some of the most disadvantaged communities of the UK early on in my career, there were so many people who would benefit from an apprenticeship if only employers knew about them and they knew about the opportunities. So we all need to do better to connect, and I suppose that's it.
Thank you very much to my guests, to David, Vickie, Deb, Anthony, for their insights on what is such a key challenge for the public sector. So right now we're going to take a 25-minute breather. Please navigate back to the timeline. I've got to try and do that as well for our next session, which is going to start in about 25 minutes time. Networking functionality is open again. So if you want to take part in a bit of quick speed networking, feel free to take a refreshments break or just unwind, whatever you fancy. Don't forget, there's an opportunity to earn points by connecting with your fellow attendees and exploring the amazing resources our partners, without whom events like this simply couldn't happen, have on offer at the digital marketplace. I'll see you back here on the timeline for our next panel debate. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.